So there are many wonderful books in recent years explaining new discoveries in the psychology of morality. These are two that I particularly like, and here's another one that I really, really like. So this is the cover of the book in English and Korean. That's the American edition. I really like the British edition. Each country has its own cover. This is what it looks like in the UK. And so in the book, what I tried to do is explain all of moral psychology in just 3 sentences. So if you understand these 3 sentences, these 3 principles, you'll understand moral psychology. So I'll go through them briefly and apply them to the problem of political polarization. So first, intuition comes first, strategic reasoning second. Many, many societies have the idea that the mind is divided into parts, and these parts sometimes conflict. And in Western philosophy, we generally have the idea, Plato gave us a metaphor, that the mind is divided like a charioteer struggling to control 2 unruly or wild horses. So the charioteer is reason, and reason can and should get control of the emotions. The horses are the emotions. And that's true wisdom and maturity. But there's a counter trend. There's an opposite view taken by a few philosophers who I think are right. So David Hume, the Scottish philosopher above all, said, reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions, and can never pretend to any other office than to serve and obey them. So if we have the metaphor of not that reason's in control, but actually that sentiment or passion or emotion is really in control, and reason is just the servant helping the sentiments or the passions, helping them to get what they want. But rather than the metaphor of a slave or a servant, I think an even better metaphor is the press secretary. So this is President Obama, of course, and this is Robert Gibbs, one of his first press secretary. The press secretary is a very, very smart guy. His job is to explain to the public and to explain to the press what the policies are. That's what he does. He's not a slave. He's not a servant. He works for the president, but they're sort of partners. Policy is made. His job is to use all his intelligence to explain it in the most compelling way. The research that I've done and many others have done fits with the idea that that's what moral reasoning is. It's a press secretary. We engage in moral reasoning to explain ourselves to others, to convince others that we are a good person. So let me show you a little bit of research. There's an enormous amount of research on what is called motivated reasoning. That means that our reasoning is guided by what we want. The basic rule is this. If I want to believe something, if I want to believe something terrible about the ruling party or about President Obama, I ask, can I believe it? Can I believe that horrible conspiracy theory that I just read about on the internet? And I don't say, well, what's the evidence on both sides? We don't do that. We say, can I believe it? And then we send our reasoning out to search for evidence, and if we find even one piece of evidence to support the claim, we stop thinking, because we have permission to believe it. We can point to a piece of evidence or a study or a news account or something, and so we have evidence for our belief. We're done. We believe it. Conversely, if we don't want to believe something, we ask, must I believe it? Am I forced to believe it? And then we look for some way to discredit the accusation, and if we find one piece of evidence, we stop thinking. We're done. So we're always able to reach the conclusion that we want to reach, as long as there's any ambiguity. So just to give you one example, in one study, subjects are brought into the lab, and they're taking a psychology course, they're learning about experimental methods, and they're given an article to read, a scientific article. It looks like a scientific article, and it shows a connection between caffeine consumption and breast cancer. So it's a scientific study. They're supposed to read it and then critique it. How are the methods in this study? And who do you think finds many, many flaws in that study? You think men or women are going to find flaws in the study? I'll pretend I heard you all say women. Yes, women are going to find flaws in the study because women don't want to believe it. But is it all women who find flaws in the study? What kind of women are going to be very critical of this study? Women who drink coffee think that the sample size was too small. They find all kinds of confounds and problems. This is a ridiculous study. Because they're asking, must I believe it? No. You don't ever have to believe a scientific study. You can always find a reason to discredit it. So this is why, in modern democracies, where people are educated, we can disagree so much on scientific questions. People who want to believe it, people who don't. So this has many implications for our democracies and for civility in our democracies. The bottom line is this. We gullibly accept claims that support our partisan prejudices, and we use all our powers to reject disconfirming information. We therefore live in two separate moral matrices, a sort of a moral network or framework. Each one has its own set of facts. Each side is certain that it is right. But why? Why do some people end up in one world and some in another? How does this happen? Well, that brings us to the second principle, that there's more to morality than harm and fairness. So here's how to understand that. What is the foundation of morality? What is morality really about? In Western philosophy, there are two possible answers. There are those who've said, well, morality is about reducing harm and suffering. That's what the utilitarians said, John Stuart Mill and other philosophers. But then there's another tradition, going back to Immanuel Kant, saying, no, morality is about rights and justice, properties that inhere in a person that must be respected and protected. So most of Western philosophy is the battle between those two positions. And I tried to be systematic about this. I tried to say, okay, what are all the things that people around the world seem to treat as moral issues? That's the anthropology line. And then I tried to link it to all the evolutionary theories about morality that I could find. And I found that there are approximately 6 major links. It's pretty clear, if you read stories from around the world, that people care about issues of care and harm and violence. Of course, that's part of morality, as is fairness and cheating, but also liberty and oppression, loyalty and betrayal, authority and subversion, sanctity and degradation. Let me illustrate these for you with some photographs. So we are mammals, and by definition, that means that we nurture our young. We have children that develop very slowly, and we care for them. It's not just our bodies that are specialized for nursing, it's our brains. We care a lot about helpless animals and children that are suffering. Now, this is a big part of political morality. On the left, these are some photos that I took at Occupy Wall Street. On the left, you almost always see signs that talk about compassion, harm, care, protection, protecting the vulnerable. Compassion is our new currency, free empathy. I can't hurt another without hurting myself. I should point out, you never see signs like this at right-wing political events. It just doesn't happen. The second foundation, fairness, justice. On the left, fairness tends to be about equality. The left really values equality. I took this photo at Occupy Wall Street. On the left, if it's true that 1% of the people own 43% of the wealth, that's automatically unfair. It's so unequal, and inequality is unfair. But on the right, they have a very different view. They would want to know, well, did the 1% create more value? Did they earn all that money? Maybe they did. This is a photograph from a Tea Party rally. The Tea Party is a right-wing populist group in the United States over the last few years. This sign says, "Stop punishing success, stop rewarding failure." On the right, fairness is proportionality. They want people to deserve what they get, whether it's good or bad. So stop punishing success means stop taxing the rich at a higher rate. You're just punishing those who've been successful. And stop rewarding failure by giving all these social programs to the losers, to people who don't work or don't want to work or have not accomplished anything. It's unethical to create equality of outcomes when there was not equality of inputs, is the claim. This is a sign from an election in the United Kingdom. Let's cut benefits for those who refuse work. Can you guess whether this was the Labour Party on the left or the Conservative Party on the right? Very much a conservative idea. The third foundation is liberty versus oppression. This is a famous image from American history. At the founding, Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Americans believe very strongly in liberty. And it's only when you understand this emphasis on liberty that you can understand this very strange flag. This is the flag of the state of Virginia, where I lived for 14 or 16 years. I was a professor at the University of Virginia. And it was only after being there for many years and doing this research on moral psychology that I noticed our flag has a murder on it. There's a dead person on our flag who was just killed. It's a strange thing to put on your flag. But if you understand that the motto at the bottom, sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants, is what the men who killed Julius Caesar shouted, if you understand this very particular psychology, that when we feel somebody is dominating or bullying us, we want to unite with those around us and take him down. We want to kill the oppressor. There's a very deep psychology of revolting against oppression. Once you understand that, now you can understand one of the big ideas behind Occupy Wall Street and many other left-wing movements. This is an image common at Occupy Wall Street. It shows a fist that says 99% about to smash a small man that says 1%. So in America, we don't like violence in our political dialogue, but this is actually quite a violent image, saying if the 99% could get together, they could crush and kill the rich. So on the left, it's the 1%, the rich and the corporations. They're the bad guys. They are the oppressors. Only government can protect us. But on the right, it's the opposite. Same psychology, but different oppressor. On the right, it's the government who is the oppressor. That flag says, "Don't tread on me." It was from the time of the American Revolution, about the king and governments that were so oppressive. This one says, "Big government equals less freedom." So left and right really disagree in America on who is the oppressor. The fourth foundation, loyalty and betrayal, goes like this. Very few animals can work together as a team or as a group. Wolves can, elephants can. Some animals can, but they're always siblings. They're always family. Humans are the only animals who can work together in very, very large groups. We can form armies. We can form gigantic teams. And it's because we evolved for war. There has been war in human history for tens and possibly hundreds of thousands of years. So we're very good at coming together to fight another team. It's only because our brains evolved for war that we actually spend so much time doing sports. I mean, why do people spend so much time doing sports and watching sports? It's because it activates our tribal psychology, which is shaped by our long history of warfare. We like this intergroup competition so much that we, in America at least, I don't know if you do it in Korea, we do stupid things like this to show support for our teams. So this is a part of human psychology, and it shows up in our politics. This is a right-wing or very conservative an author, Ann Coulter, and she wrote a whole book called Treason, Liberal Treachery from the Cold War to the War on Terrorism. The right often accuses the left of not loving the country, of not wanting to protect the country. So the right really values patriotism, protecting the country, nationalism. The left is very different. There is some truth to this charge. The left doesn't like nationalism. The left is more universalistic. Coexist. God bless not just America, as the conservatives say, God bless the people of every nation. This is a photo I took at Occupy Wall Street. The American flag has been used as a protest sign. That can happen on the left. That could never, ever happen on the right. The flag is sacred on the right. They would never draw on the American flag. So I think you have some of these issues here in Korea, where the left and the right at least the right charges that the left is soft about North Korea, is not doing what it takes to protect the nation. So many of these issues, I think, cross cultures. The fifth foundation is authority and subversion. We are primates, and primates live in hierarchies. Most primates live in hierarchies. So humans and chimpanzees show deference in very similar ways. Now, on the right, they believe that deference and authority and hierarchy are very important moral principles. This sign is from a church in my town in Virginia. It says, "God's in charge, so shut up." It's meant to be a joke, but it illustrates the idea that just defer to God. On the left, you'd never see this. Here's a sign from a very far left, an anarchist protest: "No gods, no country, no masters." So they really reject authority, and in America, we show our respect for the troops, for the soldiers who are fighting abroad. But here, I can't even say it out loud, but they're cursing the troops. So again, this could never, ever happen on the right. So America is very politically divided on most of these moral foundations. Here's the last one. There are widespread ideas that the body is a temple, and moral regulation is required to protect the sanctity of the temple. And this is especially true for women's bodies. This is an image called the allegory of chastity, showing the Virgin Mary from Christianity. So that's the Madonna, is what we call her, the Madonna, the mother of Jesus. Here's another Madonna, a very different Madonna. Now, this is from her book called Sex in the 1980s. On the left, people reject chastity. They reject restrictions on women. They think that is immoral. Here's a sign from a car in Virginia. "Your body may be a temple, but mine's an amusement park." Again, liberals laugh at conservatives for their limited or prudish attitudes towards sex. Here's a sign from Occupy Wall Street: "Nothing is sacred." I don't know what it means, but it could never appear at a conservative rally where many things are sacred. Loyalty stuff? No, that's nationalism. That's bad. And the kinds of people who move to the right, who tend to like more order, stability, tradition, wouldn't it be better if they learned about politics and learned about what motivates liberals and conservatives and what each side is right about, let each side make its best case? Why not? The yin-yang symbol means that left and right are not enemies. Left and right are often complementary, like male and female, or night and day.